Welcome to episode 3, Is Counselling for Everyone? I looked at this topic because when I was creating the Thoughts of the Mind series and I was speaking to so many different people, particularly the two subtitles, the selection of poems for a rainy day and a selection of poems for teenagers, what came up so many different times was anxiety, depression, suicide. And that just got me thinking about how individuals deal with feelings, their emotions when that comes about. And so I got in touch with a young lady called Danielle. So Danielle is a registered counsellor specialising in interactive therapy. She uses person-centered and psychodynamic approaches to provide a safe space for her clients to explore areas of difficulty and support them to process the challenges life bring. So Danielle is a registered member of the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. That's the BACP for those individuals who are in that sector. And I just wanted to welcome Danielle.
Hi, Jackie.
How are you, Danielle?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really delighted that you said yes to joining me on this podcast and, to explore and have a conversation around is counselling for everyone, because I'm sure there are so many people out there thinking about counselling, or they've thought about it and thought it's not for me. So I just wanted to explore that a bit more so, the listeners can have a listen and think about, make their own informed decision about it as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, how long have you been doing counselling and what inspired you to become a counsellor?
So I set my own private practice up in 2018. And prior to that, I had been working for the local authority. I've been working for the local authority for about 8 years now and working with young offenders. I've always had a very keen interest in mental health and psychology. And so it felt like a natural progression really into counselling and therapy. I think some of my earlier experiences in work showed me that therapy is invaluable, I'd say. And so when I first graduated, I studied psychology and I graduated, and I worked in a young offenders institute. And that was almost throwing myself into the deep end, really, because it can be quite a difficult environment to work in for a number of different reasons. But what I felt as though I realised is that I didn't personally necessarily agree with intervention, so to speak, doing things to people. And I felt that working alongside someone therapeutically just worked so much better. So actually forming meaningful relationships with people, helping people understand themselves better, what's in their control, what's not in their control. And I felt as though that was so much better than a kind of typical intervention. And there were lots of people who weren't accessing that. And so as I continued my working career, I worked in child and adolescent mental health teams, and as I said, I'm working in the youth offending service at the moment alongside my private practice. And it was just the combination of understanding how invaluable therapeutic support can be, and working alongside someone in a meaningful relationship to support them kind of move through life, but also knowing that not a lot of people, particularly from marginalised groups, access it. And that's what spurred me on to create Journey On, which is the name of, I guess, my kind of company that I do all of my therapeutic work under. So it's to encourage people to access therapeutic services that fit their needs, because there are so many different types of services, and therapy can be so life-changing that I would love for everyone to be able to access it and, debunk all of the myths that people have about therapy and who it's for and what it is.
Yeah, I think there is a myth about therapy, most definitely. I mean, I remember having counselling many years ago, and
Mm.
the counsellor, I was supposed to have 6 sessions, and after the second one, the counsellor said to me, "Oh, Jackie, you're quite articulate. I don't think you need me anymore." And then that was it. So it really felt like the
Wow.
door just closed on me.
Yeah, and I think experiences like that can also stop people from ever going back. So
Yes,
if you have an experience that feels really invalidating, it can make you think, oh well, I've tried counselling, it's not for me. Like, it didn't work. They said I was this, and so it's not for me. When actually, you could have gone to 5 different therapists and would have had 5 different experiences.
definitely, definitely. I totally agree with you, because looking back on it now, I do feel if I had gone to someone else, they may have, it may have been a different outcome.
Absolutely.
Definitely, definitely. I do. I don't know if you're aware that I do life coaching, and I do a lot of
Yes.
mentoring as well. I mentor a few young females over
Yeah.
the last year or so, and a lot of the time the question has come up around counselling and mentoring. What do you think? What's the difference between the counselling and mentoring? Is there a difference, or are they the same?
Yeah, so I would say there's a distinct difference between the two. There might be some crossover with regards
Mm,
to self-exploration element. So in mentoring and counseling, I feel like there's definitely a space for you to explore who you are within that. But I see counseling as more deep diving and unpacking very personal and potentially quite sensitive areas
yeah,
in your life, and
yeah.
having a very deep understanding of them, what they mean to you,
Mm,
the things that the kind of imprints they might have had on your life, and what you want to do with it. Sometimes counselling and psychotherapy, and sometimes those terms can be used interchangeably, but psychotherapy is really about going into your unconscious mind, and that means the parts that might have been buried by us. So sometimes we go
mm,
through life and things happen that are really painful, or they happen in our childhood, and we bury them really deep, because that can be easier than having them unpacked every day, and feeling those feelings every day. And
mm,
sometimes psychotherapy is about bringing those things from the unconscious in a safe way, in a safe space with someone you trust and who is qualified, and almost reprocessing them so that they don't impact you in the same way that they might have been impacting you throughout your life, because difficult and traumatic experiences can keep cropping back up. Sometimes we find we fall into very similar patterns, and think, why do I keep doing that? Or why does this keep happening? Sometimes it can be because of our historically very difficult experiences or trauma. And so counselling and psychotherapy particularly is very good for that.
mm,
Mentoring, you wouldn't tend to go into, I guess, trauma
mm,
or very difficult and repressed memories. Mentoring, I would say, is more about kind of guidance, advice, and using someone else's experience, their expertise, their knowledge, anecdotal information to
mm.
support your own journey.
Yeah.
In counselling, your therapist shouldn't really, and every therapist works in a different way, but generally, therapists wouldn't tend to advise you and say, well, in my experience, this has happened in X, Y,
Mm,
and Z, because your story is your story,
yeah.
and your counsellor can't take that away from you. My story is different to my client's story, so if I said, oh, I would do this, it wouldn't fit them, because I'm not them. But in mentoring and mentorship, it's slightly different, because you've got a common interest or a
Mm.
common theme that maybe they do have experience with, and it would be helpful to know that they did this, and maybe you could try it. So that I would see those as the distinct differences of the two.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, just what you were saying about the counselling side of things, it resonated with me, because at the time when I decided to go and see a counsellor, I think it was probably at a time, I wouldn't say it was my lowest point, but I was feeling lost, I suppose, and it was because of a childhood trauma that you've mentioned that a few times, and it was because of a childhood trauma that I was dealing with. So I decided at that point to go and see my GP, who then referred me to the counsellor. Um, so in terms of that, how would you What sort of advice would you give to someone considering counselling? Because they could consider it, but then be totally turned away for the fact that they may feel that it's not the norm, or society may see them as weak, or it's just a scary thing to think about going to see a counsellor. So what would you advise someone considering?
And I think you're right, Jackie. It can be very scary. Normally, first steps are always quite uncomfortable, and counselling is no different. You're going to someone, essentially a stranger, to speak about something potentially very sensitive and something that maybe you don't even want to speak about, but feel like you have to because you're noticing that it's causing difficulties in your life. And so I would always say, if you're thinking about going, just try it.
Yeah.
You can always try. And, counselling is definitely not for the weak. As a trained counsellor, I've had to go through lots of counselling myself and have it continually through my training and outside of training. I even had it before I decided to become a therapist. And you definitely, it's not about weakness at all. It's very difficult. It's quite a challenging thing to do, and it takes a lot of strength sometimes to turn up to a session.
Yeah.
And it's priceless as well. It's an investment into yourself. You can't put a price on your mental health, and if you have a very good therapeutic relationship with your counsellor, the changes that you will start to see, over a period of time, they're absolutely priceless. You can't even put a kind of cost on that. So I would advise people to take the chance, but do their research as well. So I know that you said you went to your GP. A GP can be a good place to start. Speaking to your GP about what your options are, and they might be able to refer you to a service if you're in the UK, and you might be able to access that through the NHS. There are some limitations with that. You don't generally get to choose your therapist. It's time limited, usually maybe 6 to 12 sessions, but every service is different. But ask the questions so that you have the knowledge to then pick. Private therapy is, I guess, you're able to choose. You have more choice. You can choose the type of therapist you want, the type of therapy you go for. There are lots of different types of therapy to fit personalities and the reasons that you're going. And I would say do your research.
Yeah.
And I suppose think about, like you said, you knew why you were going to therapy. I would say think about the reason you want to try it. Are you doing it just because you want to see what it's like? Are you going because there's a pattern that you notice in your life? You want to find out more about yourself? Is it just a processing space? There are lots of different reasons that you can go to therapy. So have a think about why you'd like to go. Do your research and have a look at the available types of therapy, and speak to your GP as well, so that you can keep your options open.
Yeah, no, that's some really good advice. I think, I don't know if I had it in my mind looking back that if I go to see a counsellor, they will fix me, so to speak. But, everyone has a different reason for going to see a counsellor. And I do believe that society has this, mind, this thought about, oh, if you're going to see a counsellor, you're definitely broken. And you just said something a short while ago. It's definitely not about being broken,
No.
so...
It's about being human, isn't it?
Yes.
We're human as people, and we all go through very difficult stages. Sometimes our life is filled with light, and at some points it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what life is like, and it's about finding ways to maintain our mental health. Definitely. And counselling can absolutely help you with mental health maintenance. I like what you said about going to counselling and feeling like they're going to fix it for you.
Yeah.
That resonates with me, not just as a counsellor and managing the expectations of my clients, but the first time I went to counselling, I 100% thought, this guy is going to tell me what I need to do. And when I left the first session, I thought, I have no idea how to fix this problem, even though I've been speaking to him for 50 minutes. I still don't know how to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And I think it was a learning curve for me. So this was before I was training. before I knew I wanted to become a counsellor, my first session, I wanted him to tell me what to do, and he couldn't. And now, at this stage of my life, I completely understand why he couldn't tell me what to do. Because he wasn't me. And his answer wouldn't have necessarily suited my life at the time or come from me. I needed to make an autonomous decision about what I was going to do with regard to the reason I was going to speak to him. He offered me a safe space to be able to process the thoughts and come to a decision.
Yeah. You know, I'm just thinking about something you said a short while ago about doing research and, you know, finding out a bit more information from whether it's the internet, whether it's your GP, but that, you know, it's having that expectation. And I think that expectation of that a counsellor or a therapist will go and fix you, you know, is totally the wrong expectation, to be fair. So, you know, if you was to, you know, give someone a kind of 3-pointer to what to expect if they were thinking about counselling or they were about to start counselling sessions, what would what would that look like?
Well, I would definitely say don't expect them to give you all of the solutions on a plate, because they're not going to be able to do that. I would say expect to be honest and open. You should have that expectation that honesty and openness is something that's at the heart of therapy. It's really important that you are ready to, allow yourself to kind of speak the truth and speak it freely. That comes with time. I'm not saying your first session just go in and spill your whole life, even if it feels uncomfortable, because it's about safety too.
Yes.
You have to build a relationship with your counsellor, and you should expect that too. Just like any relationship, friendship, or whatever, you have to, kind of feel each other out and vibe the situation. Does it feel like this is a good fit? It might not be a good fit, and if that's the case, then maybe you need to find another counsellor. But try some counsellors out. And once you build that relationship, I would say expect to be open and honest, because if you go to therapy and there are things that you are thinking, oh, I'm not going to talk about that, don't want to say this, don't want to say that, it might feel like you're not ready to, and that's a different issue. But if you have said, I'm definitely not going here, it probably won't serve you very well.
Yes.
And it would be good to actually note the areas that you feel like, I definitely don't want to speak about this, because sometimes those are the areas that you need to bring. So, I would say expect to be open and honest. Expect to, if you're going private, you're going to be making an investment. Private therapy, there is a charge for it. So expect to invest in yourself. It's a part of self-care. And expect to be consistent with it too. Try and make sure that you're showing up consistently and using that space, but also doing work outside of the session. Turning up weekly for 50 minutes probably won't change much. So there are things that you have to do outside of those sessions to keep that work going.
Yeah, that's some really solid advice, and just listening to what you were saying, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. I do think about those individuals who would like to tap into private counselling and actually don't have the funds for it. So, I mean, like going back to my experience at the time, the GP referred me and it was free. But then I thought to myself, well, and I always think that if something is worth investing in, I don't mind paying the money. But if at the time of my life then, I didn't have the finances to actually say, right, I'm going to go private. So what sort of things would you, consider is going to be a positive thing or positive change for individuals that maybe don't have the finances to go private, or is actually ready to do that as yet?
There are still options out there. You can still go private and access low cost counselling. So some private therapists who work independently offer sliding scales. So if you are unemployed or if you're a student, they might have a lower fee that you can pay. So I would always advise to ask.
Okay.
There's no harm in asking. If you found a therapist and you think, I definitely want to work with this person, ask them if they offer that. And let them know, having that conversation about fees is actually very important, because that is the longevity of your therapy. And if you get to a certain point and realize you're running out of money, then you could, be coming to a really pivotal point in therapy, and then it just stops like that. So having that discussion, so sliding scales and this therapeutic discounts are available with some independent therapists. Also, there are some charities and organisations who specifically provide low-cost counselling or free counselling to certain groups in society. So if you type in low-cost counselling and then the area that you live in, the search engine should show you the charities and organisations that provide low-cost counselling in your area. And there are quite a few out there. There are some which are more well-known than others, but I would always say search in your area. Because there are some very local organisations and charities that don't have a huge backing to do, massive advertising, so you won't always know about them. Do a search engine search, have a look. And I would say those are the two main areas. Sometimes those organisations might use trainee counsellors who need their counselling hours and offer different rates for people who are students, but they're still being supervised. Just because they're a student doesn't mean that they're any, that their counselling ability or skill would be any different. They're just at a different stage in their journey. So there are a few options. I know we said the GP, but if you would prefer a choice, then I would say asking a private counsellor about fees and looking for organisations or charities.
Again, Danielle, thank you. That's some really good advice. And it was me that made that decision by myself, that I needed to go and see someone, and I needed to go and see a counsellor. Well, I didn't even have the word counsellor in my mind at the time. It was literally the GP recommended that I would go and see, because I was having trouble sleeping, I was having reoccurring nightmares and everything else. But at the time that I didn't feel, walking away after those 2 sessions, I didn't feel that I was fixed at the time. And actually, has it put me off counselling? No, it hasn't, because I would definitely, if I needed to, go back and see a counsellor, because I know, what they're worth and what support you can get. And like you said, they're not telling you. A lot of the time when you're speaking to individuals, and even when you're speaking to a counsellor, you actually have that answer in your own mind, but actually thrashing it out and having someone to listen to you that's not judgmental, that's not your family member, that's not a close friend, is so, is so different. So, the support is there. So I would definitely, if I needed to in the future, go and see a counsellor, I would definitely go and go and seek one, most definitely. One big question that's coming up in my mind, and it's the name of the episode here, is counselling for everyone? So that question for you, Danielle, is counselling for everyone?
I would say that everyone can access counselling in some way, shape or form. But it might be that there are different types of counselling or therapy for different people, and I think that's really important. At different stages, I don't think that everyone either wants to access counselling or is ready to access counselling at a given stage in their life. And to be able to really make the most of it, I think you have to be ready to enter that therapeutic relationship. Otherwise, it just won't do what you want it to do. And I think that those are really important points. There are so many different types of therapy, counselling, and there is something for everyone, but it's a question of whether someone wants to commit to that and if they're ready to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a decision that the individual needs to make, and not the decision made by others, because I feel, looking back, if I was told to go counselling by either my mother or a friend, I probably wouldn't have gone and resisted and felt that it's not what I want to do. But when it's a decision that you have made and you have made alone, then I suppose that's a step towards that you're ready to have that.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
But, so Danielle, I'm going to just bring it to a close now because I've taken up so much of your time. I just want to thank you for, joining me on this episode. But before you go, I would like you to tell everyone a bit, tell the listeners a bit about your practice. I know you mentioned it's Journey On, but a bit about your practice, and I will leave the information in the description as well, so they could follow you on social media or send you emails if they wish. But just a little bit more about your practice, Journey On.
Yeah. So as I said, I started Journey in 2018, and I have a very special interest in intercultural therapy and trauma. So the intercultural therapy part is, I suppose, me acknowledging that there are marginalised groups who don't always have access to services that fit their needs and suit their needs, and sometimes that can mean that you just won't access anything at all, or you feel like actually counselling isn't for me. No one in my family went to counselling. There's a stigma around this. We don't do that kind of thing. And I wanted to break down some of those barriers, particularly in the Black community. And so intercultural therapy is about bringing culture into the therapy room. So it's about me as a therapist being culturally competent and understanding what I bring into the dynamic with my clients, but also what they bring into the dynamic, and not shying away from culture, who they are, issues around racism, systemic oppression, internalized oppression and racism, and it's bringing all of those things into the therapy room. The other part, trauma, I've worked in lots of different trauma-informed environments throughout my working life, and I think it's something that everyone should have knowledge of, because it's so fundamental to just being a human and how our brain responds to certain situations. And I think once you have that knowledge and that psychoeducation, it makes things click. You stop blaming yourself for things that have bugged you your whole life, and you wonder, why on earth did I respond in this way, or why has this happened, or why am I carrying this weight? And I love supporting my clients to understand how our brains respond to distressing information, how we hold it in our bodies, what we can do to let it go. And so the intercultural therapy and the trauma part are kind of my areas of special interest, and that's what I use a lot with my clients. And so I see clients one-to-one. At the moment, it's all online. I also provide training. I do workshops for other therapists as well, to help them get into private practice. And I'm just about to start a group therapy in July, which is for mixed race women, and it's providing a therapeutic space to explore what that has been like growing up mixed race. And I've also got an ebook which I wrote a few years ago, but it's a free ebook on my website, and it's a guide to finding the right therapist. And so if people want to download that after hearing this conversation and need some more tips on how they can actually go about finding a therapist that meets their needs, then that's free to download. And my website will be on the link underneath the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. But I will put all that information. And again, Danielle, thank you for taking some time out of your busy day. I know how busy you are, and appreciate, you're able to come and just have that conversation, explore that topic around, is counselling for everyone? And just to say to all the listeners, I will again put all the information in the description, so you can link with Danielle. If you've got any questions, download her ebook. Feel free to follow her on social media. And I will see you all, or speak to you all, next week in the Listener's Voice segment. And stay blessed, everyone. Bye.